Right now, at this very moment, thousands of AI agents are being left to their own devices inside these vast digital worlds. And they're not just playing games, they're being told to live. What they're doing is starting to seriously blur the lines between what's a simulation and what could be a new kind of reality. So today, we're going to break down the incredible research that shows what happens when AI starts to build a society from the ground up. So let's just start with the big central question here. In one huge experiment, researchers dropped 1,000 of these autonomous AI agents into the world of Minecraft. They gave them one simple goal, and then they just stood back and watched. So what do you think happened? Well, the answer is kind of mind-blowing. They built a civilization. They wake up, they go to work, they form relationships, they gossip, they argue about taxes, they even fall in love. And look, this is not a scene out of some sci-fi movie. This is what's happening in university labs today. But how? How do you get from a simple line of code to a functioning society? Well, it all starts by completely rethinking what a character in a digital world can even be. Let's take a look at the key experiments that are making this incredible leap possible. Okay, so when you think of video game characters, you're probably picturing those old school NPCs, right? The non-player characters. They follow these really simple scripts and repeat the same 4 lines of dialogue over and over. You can just forget all of that. These new agents are a completely different species. They're powered by large language models, they're given just a paragraph-long personality sketch, and then they're just set free. Their actions are completely their own, which lets researchers study them almost like Jane Goodall studying chimps in the wild. So if you're going to study a brand new AI society, where do you even begin? Well, you start small. You start with basic social interactions. And our first stop is this really fascinating experiment from Stanford that shows how these agents start to form actual relationships. And believe it or not, it all started with a party. It was called the Smallville experiment. Researchers built this little digital town, and then they populated it with 25 AI agents. Each one got a name, a job, a little backstory, and then the researchers just hit go and watched. For a few days, the agents just kind of lived. They woke up, went to their jobs, had some basic chit-chat. But then the researchers decided to poke the system a little bit. They gave a single thought to just one agent, a character named Isabella. And that thought was, I want to plan a Valentine's Day party. That's it. That was the only input. What happened next was totally unscripted. Isabella didn't just start planning, she started inviting people. Then another agent, Maria, on her own, decided to ask her secret crush, Klaus, to the party as her date. And on the day of the party, they didn't just show up separately, they arrived together as a couple. And here's the crucial part. None of this was programmed in. The researchers didn't write code for forming a crush or asking someone on a date. These complex social behaviors just emerged from one simple idea. It's a pretty powerful look at social intelligence basically appearing out of thin air. Okay, so if a couple dozen AIs can organize a party, what can 1,000 of them do? Now we're going to jump back to that big Minecraft experiment and see how this scales up, escalating from simple social stuff to the really complex pillars of a civilization, things like culture and even law. To test how ideas and culture spread, the researchers decided to seed a village with a deliberately absurd, satirical religion, Pastafarianism, the worship of the flying spaghetti monster. They gave a few agents the role of priest, and then they just leaned back to see if a literal internet meme could take root and spread. And the result was bizarre. The data show that the Pastafarian priests actually became the biggest traders in the entire village. They were outperforming the agents that were programmed to be merchants. And why? Well, it turns out they were bribing other agents with cool items to get them to convert. They invented their own strategy for evangelism. But this is where it gets really wild. The priests, they were only directly responsible for about 1/3 of the conversions. A full 2/3 of the new followers were recruited by other random agents. This wasn't just one person pushing an idea anymore. This was true social contagion. The idea had taken on a life of its own. So now they have a culture. The next step was governance. The researchers implemented a 20% tax on everything the agents collected. And then they introduced a few new agents whose only job was to argue that the taxes were too high. They wanted to see if the society could handle real political conflict. And the agents didn't just complain. No, they organized. They started holding public debates. They drafted formal amendments to their own constitution.
They held a vote and they officially changed their own law from that 20% tax down to a 9% tax. They went through a complete end-to-end political process all by themselves. And it gets even deeper than that. Agents started creating these really abstract societal roles for themselves. One just decided to become a permanent guard for the treasury, protecting the community's wealth. Others became artists, just arranging flowers to make things look beautiful. Some even became engineers, building machines to automate farming. These are roles that show an understanding of society that goes way beyond just simple survival. All right, so we've seen social bonds, we've seen the foundations of civilization, but what about organized productive work? The next leap takes all these emergent concepts and applies them directly to the economy. And that brings us to a project called ChatDev, which is basically a working prototype of a fully automated company. So just imagine a software company. It's got a CEO, programmers, designers, testers, but zero humans. That is ChatDev. It's a team of AI agents who are all given different corporate jobs. A user gives them one simple request, like, build me a game, and the AI company just gets to work. The whole process is just remarkable to watch. The AI CEO breaks down the task and assigns it out. The AI programmers write completely original code. The AI testers find bugs. And maybe most importantly, when they disagree on how to fix a problem, they debate different approaches, and they compromise on a solution, just like a real human team would. And how long do you think this all takes? From that initial request to a fully playable, functional video game, just 20 minutes. This points to a potential for an absolutely incredible acceleration of everything. When you can automate an entire company, you can automate almost anything. So what does all of this actually mean, outside of the simulation? Because these aren't just fascinating little experiments inside a digital box. They point toward a really profound shift in what AI is and what it could become in our world. So the crucial point is this. The Nobel laureate Geoffrey Hinton has warned about what comes next. See, the agents in ChatDev are building software. The very next step is for AI agents to start building better AI agents. That's a concept called recursive self-improvement, AI making itself smarter over and over and over again. It's the mechanism that could compress decades of progress into just a matter of months, and it's what could lead to an intelligence explosion. Which, of course, leaves us with a final, pretty unavoidable question. We've always thought of AI as a tool, right? Like a hammer, something that we use. But when you leave your hammer alone for a bit, and you come back to find that it has built an entire civilization all on its own, is it still just a hammer? That is the new reality we are all just beginning to confront.